I'm Marva Barnett. I'm the director of the Teaching Resource Center. I've taught French for most of my life. I'm delighted to be here. I will introduce the panelists briefly, and they'll tell you more about themselves when they start answering questions. We have a few questions we wanted to address, and we plan to leave a few minutes at the end for your questions and comments. We have with us today Emily Scida from Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese, Zvi Gilboa from Middle Eastern and South Asian languages and cultures, and Bill McDonald from Germanic literatures and cultures, language and literature, sorry. And the first question for our panelists is, how do you bring the languages that you teach into your students' lives as well as into the classroom? Emily.
Thanks, Marva. So did you want me to say a little bit about myself? I've been at UVA now for, I think, 14 years. I teach Spanish linguistics courses at the undergrad level, and at the grad level, I teach a pedagogy course for our graduate student instructors in Spanish and Italian. I've also been involved in the Summer Language Institute and summer courses taught here in Spanish and Italian at UVA, and lots of other endeavors. My main position in the department is I'm director of the language programs in Spanish and Italian, and so that means I coordinate the beginning and intermediate levels of Spanish and Italian, and I supervise and coordinate the graduate student teachers and lecturers who teach all of those wonderful courses. So to answer the first question, how do we bring the languages we teach into students' lives as well as into the classroom? I have a couple of examples. One example is in our beginning level and intermediate level Spanish and Italian language courses, we ask our students to engage in cultural learning by going out into the community and by attending a local cultural event that has to do with Hispanic culture or Italian culture, to attend that event and then to come to class prepared to reflect on it, both in writing and in class discussion. And we ask them to reflect not only on what they learned about Hispanic cultures or Italian culture, but also what they've learned about their own home culture, and to make comparisons between the target culture and their own native culture. I can point to lots of other examples, but I'd like to point out some of the work that my colleagues in my own department and in lots of other foreign language departments have been doing in bringing cultures alive to their own students. In particular, several faculty members have been awarded Meade grants, and in order to bring the culture to the students and to their own lives. And I'd like to point out Adrienne Ward, who is a professor of Italian in my own department, received a Meade grant, and she's been doing wonderful work in making Italian culture more relevant to our Italian students, both in the lower levels and in the advanced levels. And because not all of our students can afford to study abroad or don't study abroad, this is just one way to involve students in cultural activities in Charlottesville and around Charlottesville. And so some of the wonderful activities that she's organized for her students and for our department are seeing opera at the Paramount Theater here in town. She took a trip with the students to the Kennedy Center in DC to see a showing of Pinocchio, visiting a local art gallery that featured Italian contemporary artists, and lots of other events that had to do with having meals or preparing authentic meals, Italian meals, and lots of other examples like that.
My name is Zvi Gilboa, and I teach in MISALC. I teach Modern Hebrew. I'm also the Modern Hebrew language coordinator. In 2011/12, I also established here the Modern Hebrew SLI, Summer Language Institute, and we've had great success and a lot of fun. And I think what really informs and really inspired me also in teaching modern Hebrew is experiences of teaching not only Hebrew but also German, which I did at Indiana University and also in Middlebury College. And teaching a language that is not my native, I think also really helped me teaching modern Hebrew, which is my native language. As far as bringing the language to students' lives, I think I would really like to start with a short video taken by some of our students very recently. Just a second.
שלום, שלום. איך קוראים לי?
קוראים לי רייצ'ל, מי את?
אני אמילי.
נעים מאוד.
נעים מאוד. איפה את גרה?
אני גרה במעיינות, בבוני קאסל. איפה את גרה?
אני גרה במעיינות גם. דילרד?
דילרד. מצוין.
מצוין. מה איך חוויה של וירג'יניה?
ריצ'מונד. אני גרה בריצ'מונד.
אני גרה בוודברידג'.
נובה.
טוב, בסדר. מה איך חוויה של ישראל?
ישראל. ישראל. ירושלים. מה זה? זה גמל הום. הגמל הולך. גמל. איפה השמש?
אני רואה ענק.
מגניב.
מה זה? דרקון? הדרקון עף! עיפרון? לא עיפרון. הדרקון לא עף. הדרקון ישב? דרקון? קפה או תה?
קפה. אני אוהבת קפה.
אני אוהבת תה ורוד.
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
7,
8,
9.
10.
מצוין! נעים מאוד.
נעים מאוד.
להתראות.
So I think when we're talking about bringing really the language to students' lives, it's not really about bringing to the life what they do outside of class with the language, but also really making the classroom into a lively experience. Our experiences in the classroom are almost never serious, but they are very lively, and there really develops an entire culture within the group that really revolves around the language and around a lot of also authentic materials. And students really like that. This task, actually, this assignment was to record a random conversation. And the conversation was indeed random, but it did reflect a lot of what we do in the class. And you can really see, and that's for me always the big question, when students enter the classroom, before class starts, do they speak with each other in Hebrew or in English? And most of them, most of the time, do that in Hebrew, which for me is really one of the signs that this is working.
Hi, I'm Bill McDonald. I come from Detroit. Please, no jokes about Detroit. I wanted to be a high school teacher. I went bad or good. You'll have to decide. I've always been fascinated by the language, and as a non-native speaker, my challenge has always been to try to, first of all, command the language, and secondly, make it interesting to the students. And the way I've done this is, I think, through the internet. We'll talk more about that. Historians will call this the age of choice. I think that's a safe description of the age when we think about coffee. I come from the age where coffee was, do you want cream and sugar? Beers. Everything is choice. You can't order a hamburger now. You have to say, I don't want pickles on it. I want mustard on it. So the challenge for me has been to take this age of choice into the classroom. And I'm going to speak today mainly about third and fourth year classes, and I hope there are no textbook representatives out there, because I teach entirely without a textbook. All of the resources are online. And what we do as teachers, I'm afraid, or what we don't do, is we don't trust our students enough. We're afraid to cede control. And I found that by giving the students more choice, I come up with much higher level of discourse and much better text to discuss in class. Just an example from today. Human rights in China, the parliament in Chechnya, tapping phones in Germany, mining in Greenland. Would you expect students would talk about this? So what's the basic problem with American students? Lack of knowledge about geography, and secondly, about culture. So this is a way, I think, to bring this into the classroom and to do it creatively. I myself think that the development along these lines will be increasingly to let students have more say in their own learning materials. And I think our great challenge is going to be trust them.
Thank you all. I think Bill has led us into the next question, which is how we are increasing the use of authentic media in our classrooms to bring our students and the world together.
So I think we are aware that there are plenty of authentic media out there at our students' disposal on the internet and elsewhere. I think an interesting question for us is how can we integrate media in authentic ways into language learning? And I'm going to just mention a couple of examples, one coming from my own department where a couple of graduate students have engaged in an experiment this semester in their Spanish courses, in their teaching, in asking students to engage in exploration and discussion with authentic media on Facebook. So we all know that our students, many of us as well, use Facebook on a regular basis for communication, for discussion, for sharing. And these teachers have integrated Facebook into the classroom to post authentic media like images, video clips, and other media, and to ask students to just engage in a discussion and reflection of those media, and that discussion continues on during class time. So this is just one example of the authentic integration of tools that students are already using in their daily lives. Another example could be Skype. We've had a couple of teachers in the past integrate Skype in their teaching to bring native speakers into the classroom and to expose students to interaction with native speakers. I'd like to also point to other examples outside of my department. Allison Levine from French, through a fall 2012 hybrid course learning grant, course hybrid challenge grant, integrated the use of iPads into her advanced level grammar and composition course, and asked students to engage in creative projects, learning, using the iPads in creating their own animated grammar lessons and other digital projects. Allison integrates digital media, I think, in most or all of her classes. And another wonderful example of this is a documentary course in the French department where students engage in analysis of documentaries, but then they also engage in creating their own documentary. So they're both learning and analyzing this media, but they're engaging in hands-on use and practice of the tools. And so they're not just learning about the techniques and tools, they're using them and doing them themselves to create a project. And so tying in with what Bill said, that students should be engaged in projects or assignments or projects where they create their own knowledge, they create something, is one of the best ways, I think, to help facilitate language learning.
Also, along those lines, we use authentic media in all levels. I'd like to start also again with a very brief example of a first-year activity. Just a second.
האיש ישן על ספה וקם מספה, מסתכל קרוב לחדר. האיש חושב מה אני עושה היום, עומד והולך למשפט, והוא מוצא כוס בגרב בכיור, יוצא מהמשפט והולך, שותה.
I think, if all of us were old enough, and also, sadly, a lot of the people who are young but still had that experience, we started learning languages, so we had the vocabulary list, and then a quiz, and then another vocabulary list, and then another quiz. But what about simply looking at the world around us, something that is triggered by a question, I just say, what do you see? So here we have an authentic music video, a music video clip from Israel, and we play it in the classroom, we watch it, sometimes we pause it, and then we just start describing the objects, and this really shows the students that the main question is to ask yourself what you see and be able to describe it in the target language, and then as part of the reinforcement and the activity, you record a video of yourself describing the video, and the voiceover is just what we just heard now. Second year, for instance, we can have, recently we had 2 commercials from Israel. One of them takes place in Israel, the other commercial of a snack, and the snack character comes to the US and then goes back to Israel. And the second year students analyzed these commercials and then also compared them and learned a lot, not only about Israeli culture, but also about how Israeli commercial tries to portray stereotypically US culture in that commercial in order to sell that peanut-based snack. Third year, third year, of course, we continue that, but also engage with much more complex materials, videos, films like full feature films, news, parody, satire, like the Israeli version of Saturday Night Live, I guess you could call it, and a lot of other things.
I think we're in love with emerging technologies. Isn't that a nice term? As soon as we see that on the email, we have to click on it. We always want the new thing. But what about the old new thing? My hobby horse is to exploit the so-called old new media. For instance, YouTube. Listing all of the resources that are on YouTube would take us an hour. Email, remember that? But bringing that into the classroom. For instance, what we do is have students listen to foreign language, cultural, and news programming, write a summary in the target language, and then send that little summary to me. I can use that I can correct it and send it back to them immediately. I can do that and bring it into the classroom, and at the same time, they're learning about culture, geography, history, and the most important thing for anyone who's ever studied abroad, who studied abroad? Looking at your own country through other people's eyes. For me, that was one of the great moments of my education, to see America. People would walk up to me on the street, friends, and say, "Why are you crazy Yankees doing that?" And I would have to think about it. So this is a way. One of the ways, too, using these internet sites is to only use broadcasts that have to do with a perspective on the United States. And so using email, YouTube, basic internet, and also many of the sites have these videos We live in an age of a very short attention span. And videos now have enlivened the class. I have the students go up in the class and pick a video, then we'll see something in the video and try to discuss it. All of this sounds very simple, but I think that what we have to do is be imaginative about the simple, basic technologies and use them to the greatest effect.
Thank you all. We have a lot of students in the room, so I wanted to ask you, can you give an example of a student who came into language more or less coincidentally, by accident, without any real plans for doing anything with that language, and then later used that language in his or her career?
So I can think of plenty of examples of students that we've had in Spanish and Italian who have gone on to use their language abilities beyond UVA, but I wanted to just focus on one example that kind of stood out for me. A student named Justin, who was a student in one of my Spanish linguistics courses during my very first semester here at UVA teaching, started continuing with Spanish, thinking that he would double major in Spanish and something else, but found that he just fell in love with languages and with linguistics, and he just continued on that route. In his, I think, second semester, a friend recommended to him that he might want to enroll in French, so he started taking French and went up to the advanced level of French. I think in his third and fourth years, he decided to pursue Portuguese and started learning Portuguese and studied that for a couple of years. Then did a summer study abroad program in Brazil. He just kind of kept going, and then after he graduated here, he went on to teach Spanish for 2 years in a, he says, the largest middle school in Baltimore, before fulfilling his own dream to study abroad. And he did not go the route of Spanish, French, or Portuguese, but decided to live abroad in Hong Kong. And that propelled him to delve deeply into the study of Mandarin, and he studied Mandarin for 4 years. Ended up using it in the job that he happened to be in on occasion, and is currently, right now, in his second year of a dual degree program. He's pursuing a law degree as well as an MA in International Affairs. He intends to concentrate on national security or transnational crime. He spent this past summer working for the Department of Justice's Office of International Affairs, and as part of the South American division, he reviewed extradition requests, reading original legal documents in both Spanish and Portuguese. He reports to me that after law school, he hopes to pursue work in the federal law enforcement field in the international context, and that he can't see himself stopping there. He wishes to pursue studying other languages, and he's thinking Russian or Arabic might be next. So I thought he was a great example of this.
I'd like to give 2 examples, one in German and one in Hebrew. The German example is of a student whose name is Jen, originally from Indiana. And sometimes you sign up for classes, and one class has already filled up, so you sign up for the other. So this Jen actually wanted to study French, but there was no spot left, so she ended up studying German, and then it went so well. So she continued, then studied abroad. Then at some point, asking for a letter of recommendation to go for the German year that provided by DAAD. That's sponsored by the German government to send people from all over the world to Germany to have like a German experience, language experience. And apparently things went so well, meeting someone, getting married, living in Germany, having a full-fledged German life and a career there, from basically just not having a spot in the French class. So, so that was one example. And as far as Hebrew goes, again, a student I had at Indiana with Hebrew also was an interest, could have been anything else. Went really, really well. The name of the student is Daniel. Was really outstanding, then also decided to go to China to, again, study some Mandarin. And right now, still as an undergraduate, we are in touch, and he reports to me like every couple months I get an email about how this language learning experience of these languages really is an eye-opening. He's not completely sure what he'll do with that, but it is still very clear that these languages, or at least one of them, is going to feature in what he'll be doing next.
My example is not nearly as dramatic as these fictitious examples here. I had a student who reluctantly took German to complete the language requirement and then ended up getting an internship in a Swiss bank and stayed in Europe in the banking industry. So I created a capitalist.
Our panelists have been so on target that we have time for one more of our official questions before we turn to you. And we want to talk about assessment. So the question is, how can we turn assessment of how well people are doing in the class into an integral part of the language learning process?
I think one way we can do this is by getting our students more involved in assessment themselves. And I'm thinking about not just, well, examples of student self-assessment as well as peer assessment during the course. So formative assessments. I'm going to mention another example that's currently going on. A graduate student is investigating the effect of integrating goal setting in her course. So she has asked students to create their own goals for their learning in that particular course, in the language course. So where do they see themselves at the end of the course? And then also smaller goals every week or even more frequently during the semester, and self-assess, self-evaluate how they're doing and what they can do better, for example, to meet those end goals. I think this is just one example of something that we could all integrate into our teaching, but asking students to engage in self-reflection and self-assessment of their learning during the course, not just at the beginning or at the end, but during the course of the semester, and also asking students to engage in peer assessment I think helps them with their own language development, as well as allows them to engage in peer teaching and peer learning and collaboration. One thing that we could investigate in our language courses is the integration of learning portfolios, I think. And maybe having our students create a portfolio of their own work, of selected documents that demonstrate improvements or significant learning experiences during the course of the semester, as well as a reflection on that progression. Now, this type of idea, I think, would be wonderful to integrate into our major or minor. So a student who starts a major in a particular language could start collecting learning artifacts, learning documents at the beginning of their major, and continue collecting those documents and reflecting on them during their years in the major, culminating in a final reflection on their learning over all of those semesters, and a kind of a showcasing of their learning in the major or their minor, and this could be shared within the department as a kind of graduation present, if you will.
So in the Hebrew program, one of the first things I did basically was to completely do away with the tests and the quizzes. We only have assignments, we have lots of them, and the students do spend a lot of time learning the language. They know that they need to spend the first year, for instance, between 60 to 75 minutes every day of the week, and then a couple more hours on the weekend. But every assignment is either like a check or no check, and that means that there is no anxiety on the student's part as to points being taken off because of mistakes and all the tediousness of bean counting. On top of that, students know that if they completely did not understand something, did it completely wrong, they always have a chance to do it again. As far as the 4 skills go, we know in language learning we have listening and speaking and reading and writing. And by also doing away with tests and quizzes, we can actually really assess each of the skills separately. So the video you saw before, for instance, with the dialogue, that is really about the conversational skill. For the reading, especially Hebrew has a foreign alphabet. It has the Hebrew alphabet. So students also record themselves, audio recording, so you can see that they can read the text, actually read it out loud. Then they have written assignments, and the written assignments usually have 2 versions, a first draft, and then they correct everything. Sometimes they need also to write a 3rd one. So this really allows to see what the student can do in each of the skills separately. Also, one thing for language teachers, one thing with a test is you see an answer and it's either right or wrong, but you don't really see the process that makes an answer wrong. There's another video, I don't have time to show it right now, but 2 students are conducting a dialogue, and in Hebrew you have different pronouns for masculine and feminine. So you see one of the students is actually not really sure which one to use, then he's using the wrong one. And then his partner, and the student is a male partner, the partner who is a female student then uses the wrong one addressing him. That actually means she was listening and she realizes she needed to use the other one. When you have a traditional form of assessment, which is just written, you completely miss out on that part, and you don't really see also over time how students progress. So of course, all the videos you saw today all had a bunch of mistakes in them, but if you take all the videos that students create and all the other assignments and you trace it over a semester, and then through the period of the 2-year sequence, you really see how they make progress, and that's also something students can show later, even to a future employee, say, you see, this is how much Hebrew I was able to learn in 2 years of modern Hebrew at UVA. And that's something that, for me, is maybe one of the most important things, that students think about it in terms of progress and not in terms of what I was able to produce on Monday morning between 10 and 11.
The challenge is to see each assignment as an assessment. But often we give a grade and it seems to be punitive. And so I'm trying to encourage the students to analyze this. Why in the world did I receive this grade? And we also have a process whereby the students keep a kind of a diary about the mistakes, the type of mistakes that they're making. And then we have a day of reflection. We call it a day of sin and atonement. The students look at the typical mistakes. Most of the time, they're typical mistakes. They can be grouped some way. German grammar itself is formidable. An unabridged German grammar is 800 pages. So every day that I teach, I look at that 800 pages and I say, if we can just master a little bit of those 800 pages, we will accomplish a lot. So again, we don't want grades to be seen as something that's punitive, but as a basis for analysis and improvement.
Thank you.